Just going to give everyone a little bit of time since we're a couple minutes early. Hi, Kurt.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Oh, some headphones.
I muted
Okay.
everyone else.
Hold on, let me unplug these headphones. It's my wife's computer, so it's kind of screwy. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I
Perfect.
can hear you now as well, so that's good.
I appreciate you taking some time. I know that everyone's day is pretty busy, so.
Well, not mine.
So I was just, you know, some of the kids, we had a list of books they could read, and definitely one of the, you know, there's not a ton of swimming books out there, but, you know, some of them are familiar with your story then. And since now you're a local kind of guy, I was hoping that you could just take a little bit of time. You know, everyone's a little bit struggling with, uh, you know, not having a pool, and certainly the bigger picture as well. But I don't know if you just take a minute and kind of, you know, talk to the kids about whatever, you know. I think every athlete has dealt with some adversity. Certainly you have, and maybe provide them with a little bit of perspective.
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to take questions and make this a discussion as well. But I guess I had a couple thoughts on it. One, this is absolutely really difficult, I think, for everyone. And for an athlete who wants to be training and have goals coming into this and feels like, you know, for many of you, I'm sure this feels like a critical time in your career where you're expecting to make big strides and or qualify for a meet or whatever, and you're having to put that on hold and feeling like maybe you're even slipping back. I can only imagine how painful that must be. And I remember there are a couple things that came to mind for me. Was when I was in high school, I started swimming as a sophomore in high school, so I was a real late bloomer. But I was making quick improvements, and I was getting ready at the end of my junior year to go to a swim meet and shave and taper and try to make make some big cuts and try to attract the attention of college coaches. And I started losing some of the vision in my left eye, which was just scary. But at the same time, I just sort of tried to wish it away. But the reality set in that this is a real medical issue. I went to an ophthalmologist and I had what's called a detached retina, which meant that like the retina was separated from the back of my eye. And if I didn't do anything about it, I would lose my vision in my left eye. So this was like 2 weeks before this big swim meet we had that was across the country. And I had to just back out of the swim meet, miss that whole season, go get eye surgery, be out of the water for a couple of months. And it really broke me. It was really crushing. But what's funny is how quickly I was able to recover later. Like what you don't realize when you're in the middle of it, it just seems like your whole world is upside down. So, right now everything's different and it's just, miserable and you're waiting it out. And it seems like the end isn't in sight. But I guarantee you in 2 or 3 years, you'll look back on this and be like, oh yeah, that was a weird time, wasn't it? You'll have moved on well beyond it. So I guess my biggest advice is just try to take a long view and hang in there in the meantime, and try to do as much as you can out of the water. I'm sure Emily's given you exercises you can do so you'll come back, not completely starting from scratch, and stuff like that I think can be good emotionally as well.
Yeah, I think that's always good advice, that and when you take everything in perspective, it doesn't, when you look back, it doesn't necessarily look like it did in the moment.
Yeah.
Some of them are a little bit late to coming to swimming, or are going to be late developers. I don't know if you can offer some advice kind of sticking that out, and your best days can definitely be in the future.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you're all young. I don't know. You look like all high school age or so. Is that roughly right, Emily?
Yeah.
Yeah, more or less. So yeah, like I said, I started swimming in high school, and I improved every season for like the next 10 years. So it's not like you hit age 18 and you're fully grown. Like as a swimmer, you're still very much going to be developing for many years after that. And the way I see it, you're on a curve of growth and improvement. And if you take a slowdown for a year, it's not like you're just going to get back to where you were. You're going to come back, and you're going to be a year older and capable of being a year stronger, you're smarter, and you're going to get back on the same curve you were on before. So take the long view, and think about what the kind of swimmer you want to develop into for years from now. I know not all of you will be college swimmers, but I hope many of you will have that opportunity. It's a great time, a lot of fun to do. But you should really be developing pretty dramatically during your college years as well. And that's going to be, it's better that this is happening now if it had to happen than nearer the end of your career when you're truly at your peak.
Yeah. And I should have done this in the beginning, but can you give people like kind of your background, like your swimming? It doesn't have to be,
Sure.
every moment, but
Yeah. I'll spend a couple minutes on it at least. So let's see. I grew up in San Diego. I'm 46 years old, so I was born in '73, but I was a beach kid. I also had asthma, and so while I grew up playing on the soccer team, it ended up being a really lousy sport for me because I was allergic to grass. So I would often get asthma attacks during workouts and have to sit on the side. And I was just generally really uncoordinated and bad at sports. But as I was getting into high school, I really wanted to try to do a high school sport. I just thought I'd enjoy the camaraderie of it and getting to know new people in school. And so I talked to my doctor about what sport he'd recommend, and he said swimming would be a great one, just because it's good aerobic activity, and it's the humidity near the surface of the water is actually good for asthmatics because it traps a lot of the pollen and so on. So I went out for swimming my sophomore year, and still remember my first workout where my mom was driving me to work out, and I was holding my goggles in my lap, and I'd never worn them before, so I didn't really know what I was doing. And I was wearing like surf trunks because I didn't want to wear a Speedo. And I just thought, I just hope I don't make a fool out of myself. But I sort of did. I had I just had a really rough start. I only knew how to swim freestyle. But I loved it. I just made friends right away, made fast improvements my first year, and was kind of a sprint freestyler all through high school. I dropped a lot of time each year. I started year-round swimming after that first season with North Coast Aquatics down in San Diego. And I just really loved it. And near the end of high school, I think it was at the end of my or beginning of my senior year, my coach had me swim a breaststroke race. And my time in the breaststroke was more competitive than my times in the freestyle, even though I viewed myself as a freestyler. And so we decided, okay, we're going to start training some breaststroke. And I did that, and I ended up just missing senior national cuts at the end of my senior year. I got into Stanford kind of on an academic basis, but decided to go and walk onto the swim team. The coach was going to allow me to go and try to make the team, basically. So I did that, and dropped a lot of time, or really actually not right away. So that first season was just totally brutal. I was, in a really challenging college and also an incredibly intense training environment. And there were times that season when I was, just way off my times, but I just gradually improved. And at the end of that season, I went to the NCAA's, national championships for college, and I was in the 200 breaststroke, and I qualified first for finals. It was my first real national meet. So I just made this huge jump based on all the hard training I'd done. And I trained at Stanford all 4 years, just gradually improved each year. By my senior year, I was first in the country in among college swimmers for both breaststrokes. I actually was then accepted to med school, and I'd never been a very good long course swimmer. I'd always been like bottom of the finals at nationals, and you have to be top 2 to make the Olympic team. So I thought, well, I'm really kind of stuck here. There's 4 or 5 guys who are better than me. So I actually quit after my senior year and had been accepted to Stanford Med School, and so was planning on going there. And about 6 weeks later, one day I was riding my bike to class on campus there, and I just all of a sudden had this like lightning bolt hit me that I thought, I just need to see if I can make the team. And so I actually just got back on my bike. I biked down to the pool and talked to my coach, and he said, I'd welcome you back. Let's give it a shot. And just believing in myself like that summer, I won nationals in the 100 breaststroke. And it was my first time winning or even being in the top 5 of any breaststroke race in long course meters. So that was a huge stride. And then ended up going to Olympic trials and making the Olympic team in both breaststrokes, and went to the Olympics. I didn't do great in the Olympics individually. I went my best time in the 100, but only got 6th, and was off my time in the 200 and got 8th. But then I swam the prelims of the 400 medley relay, and we won that. So I got a gold medal for my participation in the relay. And then after that, I went back and I started med school, but I kept swimming during school, kind of like as an undergrad, kind of like as a college student. And I had actually 2 of my best seasons in 97 and 98 when I was first in the world in the breaststrokes, and I won world championships in 98. So it was like a really short period. I started swimming in like I guess, 88, and I won worlds in 98. And then I swam for 2 more years, and I really tanked by then because I had some knee injury problems. I wasn't even close to making the team in 2000. So it was this really intense, like 10-year period of my life where I was totally in it and really focused on it. And then I moved on and I finished med school. I married my wife, who was my girlfriend all through college. We had 2 kids in 2002 and 2004. So they're roughly your age, some of you. So that my son is 18, getting ready to graduate from high school, and my daughter's a sophomore and she's 15. So that's my story. I stopped swimming for a long time since then. But a few years ago, I started doing a little bit of master swimming, and I've really been enjoying that. It's been a lot of fun to get back in the pool. You guys would all kick my butt, but it's keeps me in shape, keeps me clean.
I don't know. You're a pretty fast master swimmer.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, your story, I think what's nice about it is that, you know, I think some kids believe that they plateau at 14 or 15, and, you know, sometimes there is a little bit of a stall, but you know, I believe people can swim, and I think people are showing us now for sure a little bit with the resources available to them, but, you know, you can swim well into your 20s and 30s even. So
yeah. My biggest advice on that would be just it's a little bit counterintuitive, but don't do the same thing over and over again. Even if you think it's working, look for ways to improve on it. And when I went to, I was lucky in a way that I'd started so late, because when I went to college, I knew that everyone at Stanford knew a lot more about swimming technique and training and so on than I did. So it was really easy for me to just say, I'm just going to completely change my stroke. I'm going to just try to learn, you know, a completely new way of training. I'm going to throw myself into this and, you know, die at the end of sets because I've pushed too hard at the beginning. I'm just going to be like, I'm going to let myself be in over my head rather than like just play it safe, you know? And so that ended up working out super well for me that first year, you know, as a freshman. And actually probably my worst year in swimming, even though I improved a little bit, was my sophomore year in college. Because that year I was like, well, everything I did last year was really good, so I'm going to try to do exactly that again, versus like pushing the envelope and doing new things. And I went a little bit faster, but it was kind of disappointing because I'd made this kind of improvement and I just made this kind of improvement. And so my junior year, I was like, okay, what can I do that's completely different that will, you know, really build my confidence and, you know, fitness and technique. And what I did was actually I got on the bike and started doing cross training on a road bike and in the gym on a stationary bike, and was riding about I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 hours a week on the stationary bike. And then when I was off school, I was biking 150 or 200 miles a week on a road bike. And my philosophy behind that was, at the end of a 200 breast, I want to think about how tired everyone else's legs are and know that I've put in the training that my legs are not going to get tired and that I can bring it home. And so that year, again, I made a big improvement. And so I just think like, this is a time, actually, I just thought of another story I got to tell you, but this is a great time to just do something a little different with your training. And I think going forward, I would encourage you to always renew yourself. Don't just fall back on the old patterns. But the story I wanted to tell you, it's a great one. One of my college roommates, a guy named Ray Carey, he was a superstar swimmer in high school. He was a 158 200 meter butterflyer long course as a high school senior, which is fast now and was really fast back then, 25 years ago. But he was really a pretty solid bet for the Olympic team in 1996. But then about a year and a half before, he got this really weird and rare nerve injury in his shoulder where he couldn't lift his arm past, like, right in front of him. He couldn't even lift his arm over his head. And so he was like, well, my hopes are crushed. How am I going to deal with this? There's no way I could possibly make the Olympic team. But he thought, well, the one chance I have is to make my legs incredibly strong. And so what he started to do was he did our workouts, but he kicked them. And sometimes he did our workouts kicking them on our intervals. Once he started getting in shape for it, it was just incredible, the kinds of sets he did. There was one set he did, I'll never forget it. It was long course meters, 12 150s, butterfly kick with a board. All right, so we're talking 1,800 meters total, butterfly kick with a board on the 205 interval. So it was like just over a 120 per 100 interval, long course meters for 1,800, and he made it. And, there were days like that where it's like, wow, this guy actually could kick the 200 fly and almost make the team. But the end of the story was he ended up going to trials and getting second, making the team, his lifelong dream. And his shoulder started to work again, 6 months or so before the trial. So he was able to get back in some kind of shape, but he was still way behind on his upper body, but his legs were strong enough that he was able to make the team. So he got to live that dream. So it's a little bit like you guys, not being able to swim for a while. Just figure out what you're going to become exceptional at. And if you have the motivation and energy to throw into that, you could come out ahead if you really work at it.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Just because you can't swim doesn't mean you can't be making gains in other ways.
Yeah.
Well,
From the kids, what sort of is on your mind, or what aren't we talking about, or what, I don't know, what are you, what am I saying that doesn't make sense, or that you'd like to hear more about, or whatever?
Yeah, guys, unmute yourselves and then ask. Nate, I know you have a question. They get oddly shy on this.
Don't be shy.
No one has any
I'll
questions?
call on people. I'll call on Kellen because my son's name is Kellen.
Oh, Kellen.
Oh, he disappeared. He's like, see ya.
So, how much did you work out per week during that college time?
Good question. Probably 25 hours a week, I would say. It's pretty intense. So we would do doubles 3 days a week, like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings, and then singles Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and then Sundays off. And then we'd also lift weights 2 or 3 times a week. So it was a fair number of hours. It was really the intensity, though, that was the most notable in college swimming, because like I said, I was just becoming a breaststroker, competitive level breaststroker near the end of high school. And so I went and joined this team where there were 3 guys who were top 10 in the country in the breaststroke. And so, it was a lot of hours, but it was also hours where I was going forth in a lane with these 3 guys who were, I just didn't want to be lapped by them. And so I loved that environment. I mean, it was really, really hard, but it was exciting to be in a little over my head with guys who are better than me. I'm really glad I made that choice, because actually when I went to Stanford to visit and talk to the swim coach, and I said, or I think my dad said to him, we're a little nervous for Kurt that if he comes to Stanford, he might end up being a little fish in a big pond, if you know that expression. Mm-hmm. And whereas he might go somewhere else and be, a big fish in a little pond. And Skip Kenny, the coach, said something that was really a big part of what made up my mind, which was, yeah, but if he comes here, he has the chance to be a big fish in a big pond. And there wasn't anywhere else where I could have done that. So it was super intense, but I'm so glad I did it, because it just taught me that I can accomplish more than I thought.
Yeah.
Compared to club, and like college? What was like the difference? Was it like a big jump from the club training?
Yeah, it was, I would say it was, one thing that was really different was the average level of the people on the team was way higher. Like in high school, I had been one of the best swimmers on the team, right? So I could always kind of stay in my comfort zone and still feel like I was one of the better people in a workout, better swimmers in a workout. Whereas college, it was, a lot of the best swimmers in the country. So you could take that either way, right? You could say, well, that sounds really threatening and challenging, but if you're inspired by that kind of thing, like for me, looking across the pool and seeing Jeff Rouse do a backstroke set, who was the world record holder, and watching these guys who are sub 15-minute milers, short course, do distance sets was super inspirational. So that was hard, that part. But I guess the other things that were different were there was a lot more specialized coaching, I would say. So in high school, we had my high school coach he was great. He's a fantastic coach. But he wasn't like a weight training specialist. He wasn't a nutrition specialist. He wasn't a stretching specialist. Whereas when I got to college, we had all these kind of assistant coaches and other people who were pitching in. So I felt like I had a ton of great guidance and advice, which was really cool. But I still remember, it's not like it's just uniformly always harder, college swimming. It's I still remember some sets I did in high school that were among the hardest that I ever did, that were just, so it's really how much effort you put into it that determines how difficult it is.
Earlier you talked a lot about how cross training really helped you just get to that next level. And
Yeah.
Now that we can't really swim as much since we don't have access to pools, and really all we have is the cross training. Do you have any recommendations or things to say about that?
Yeah, sure. I'm sure there are a lot of people who are more engaged in the sport right now who are doing better thinking on it. And frankly, like if you'd asked me how should I train for swimming even before the COVID-19 thing, my advice would have been way out of date. So take this with a grain of salt. But what I would think is that you want to build your strength and your strength, your aerobic fitness, and your flexibility, right? And in ways that will be accretive to your swimming. And in terms of aerobic fitness, doing some cycling or doing some running, I think could be really helpful. So when you get back in the pool, your heart's, pumping, your physiology is efficient. In terms of weights, depending on what you have access to, I actually bought some stuff off Amazon just so I could continue to lift weights. So I have like a pull-up bar in my house, and I try to do sets of pull-ups and push-ups and different ab exercises and back raises and squats and things like that. I think just doing, figuring out something that you're going to try to get better at than you were before, whether it's pull-ups or, some exercise that's really swimming specific is good. I also I know there's a lot of debate about whether bands are good or not, but I kind of like just stretch bands where, you you're pulling like in a swimming motion. I think can replicate swimming pretty well. And then you have flexibility, I think, can keep the stretching up. I don't know, what are you guys doing? Like, is Emily working with you on workouts, or are you just completely on your own and making it up, or?
It's kind of that. Emily does send out workouts for us to do with, she sends out core workouts, some general workouts, and then also some of us are doing like lots of aerobic stuff on our own too.
Yeah. I think that's probably the best you can do. I guess the one thing I would just reiterate is if you figure out a few aspects of your swimming strength, and aerobic endurance and flexibility that you're going to make better, hopefully even far better than they were before, then this isn't completely just like trying to close the gap to where you were. It's like some things can be better. And then I think just probably physically and emotionally, you're going to be better off if you can do that. It'll give you confidence going into the next season, right?
Awesome, thank you.
Sure.
Well, as everyone can see, we have our running countdown, so we probably have time if someone has one more question. But there's no pressure. You don't have a question, you don't have to ask. But
so you were talking about like never swimming the same thing like the same way multiple times in a row. How would you recommend like changing your strategy up?
Yeah, I think it depends. I would be really analytical about it. Like I would try to take stock at the end of each season of what I thought could make me better, and when I was going to college from high school, I thought the biggest thing that could make me better was improving my stroke, because I'd never really gotten professional instruction on it. So my biggest focus as a freshman in college was, I'm just going to learn new technique. Like I'll just do whatever the coaches tell me to try, and I'll try 50 different things and see what helps me the most. I told you my sophomore year was kind of a flop, but my junior year, then it was like, what I really need is leg fitness. And then going into senior year, I decided what I really need now is strength. So I really worked on my upper body strength and got to where I could do multiple sets of 25 pull-ups. And I was like a beast strength-wise. But it's, I think getting to, and then actually another year, I had certain swimming sets that were benchmark sets for me that I was like, I want to be able to go like this. We did this set of 5 300s, and I wanted to be able to descend my 300s from 330 down to 305 breaststroke. And I knew if I could do that, that I could make the Olympic team, that kind of thing. So this isn't super specific advice, because I think that the actual answer needs to come from your own head as to, what could you change that will make the biggest difference for you. But when I say change things up, you don't have to change everything, but just like pick a couple things that you think will make the biggest difference.
awesome. Well, before we all get cut off abruptly, and then it's a sad way to depart,